So I'm here today with Chuck Ryan with Real Inspection Services, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the inspection, because in a real estate transaction, I think most people feel as though they get through the negotiation of all the terms and they don't realize the role that inspection plays in a real estate transaction. So first, why don't you tell me just a little bit about yourself and how you got to Real Inspection Services and your background and
Sure.
yeah.
So it was a journey. When I first started the inspection industry, I came from a background where I was a market maker's assistant down at the Board of Trade. I worked for my cousin. And at that time, the market was transitioning from the open outcry to doing things more on a computer level, and I knew I just didn't have the bandwidth or the wherewithal to just sit in front of a computer and do trading. So at the time, I did go back to college. I finished up my remaining 2 years and went to National Louis University, got my associate or my business degree there, and then as I was looking to kind of get into the real estate field, because my parents had owned some properties at the time, and I was the one that was always looking after the properties. So I wanted to know a little bit more of how to interact with the trades in whether it was a plumbing issue or an electrical issue, just so I was aware of it. One day I was going through the Sunday Tribune, and the cool thing about the Sunday Tribune is they always had that big real estate section in there that was like a book in itself.
Your place.
Correct. And I came across that, and I was stumbling through different pages, and I saw a course that was offering people to learn about the inspection industry. And they actually had an open house that following Monday. So I went there, I signed up for it, and lo and behold, that next Monday was the first class, and I guess they say the rest is history.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
That was back in '97, and I really started getting my feet wet in the industry. I did a 1.5 year internship with the instructor. I learned a lot from him. That coming into the industry back then, you didn't have the education that you have today to learn how to become a home inspector. So that to me, I knew I just couldn't do a 16-week course, that there was just tons of information out there about a home, how it functions, how it works, how a furnace works, how a hydronic heating system works, the different terms of electrical. There's just so much information out there that I knew I had to kind of stick with him a little bit longer. And I did, and it paid off because I learned a lot from him. So I would
It's the
say
best way to learn, I think.
it is.
By watching somebody else
It
and
was,
a seasoned
and
professional.
He was
Mentor.
he was a great mentor. So probably around 1.5 years after that, I started going full time doing this, and it was a struggle because, you know, a new guy coming in the industry. At that time, I was 29 years of age. So the one thing that was kind of looked at was, this guy's kind of young to be doing home inspections. So, but it was just, I ended up sticking with it. It took about maybe 3 years to about 4 years for me to get this off the ground and to get it to where it is today. So the company that I started back then was called Precision Property Inspections. As the years went on, I had a friend, or I have a friend, he's in the appraisal industry. You know him, Tom Scher.
You'll hear from him.
Yes, and we knew that sooner or later our two industries were going to come together. So we had talked about it over the years, and we saw a value of both of our industries. So what we had then done in about 6 years ago is I merged my company. We changed the name to Real Inspection Services, and we're a full one-stop shop home inspection company. So we don't only offer home inspections, we offer sewer scope inspections, which we've seen over the years are a vital part of having a home, or being part of a home inspection, as well as radon. And then we also do air quality testing. So we do mold testing. Sometimes people will call us to ask us, you know, if we can do an air quality test their child might have some symptoms.
Right.
They might have an autoimmune deficiency, so we've gotten involved in that. So we're basically a one-stop shop. We can provide anything that they need for an inspection.
It's wonderful. I remember meeting you for the first time. I think you were speaking at one of our meetings, and I just was really impressed with your attention to detail, your thoroughness, and the way that you kind of came at the whole inspection process. And I remember reaching out and getting your card, and you've been in my phone ever since. So can you talk to us just a little bit about the inspection process? Like what's kind of your typical inspection process?
Sure. So
Other than arriving at the house or before the realtor.
we pride ourselves for that. So so the process, and I have kind of established that, and that's something I learned from my mentor years ago, is to develop a routine. So we will let the buyer know that we want them to participate in the inspection. We will have a Q&A with them on the phone as they're scheduling the inspection. Jane Doyle, she's our operations manager. She does a wonderful job at scheduling inspections. I always say she smiles through the phone, and she has a good personality. So she's able to kind of walk the potential buyer through the process of what they need to prepare themselves for the inspection. So once we arrive on the inspection site, we'll have what we call, and I can't take credit for this, but it's called the driveway pitch, where we will meet the person outside, the buyer outside. We will tell them this is what's going to be the process, or this is how the process is going to be for the inspection. We let them know that we want them to participate. Sometimes we know that people, when they show up, they're anxious. This might be their first house. Whether it's their first or second house, there's still some anxiety there. So we let them know sometimes if they ask us a question, we're not in that specific area. If they can just kind of hold that question till we get there, we'll remind them. The other thing is sometimes the in-laws come. Sometimes a brother will come. So we have to establish the ground rules, because if the inspector that's on site doesn't establish ground rules for the inspections, things can get lost and it can go in different directions, and typically it's not good. So once we establish the ground rules, our way of doing an inspection, for me, since I'm left-handed, I will go on the exterior. I start from left, go around the property, left side, and then we'll come back counterclockwise. That's just how I have done it. We will always set a routine for the inspection. So if my other inspectors show up to a property, if they want to go right side, they have to make sure that they walk around the property twice. Typically then what we'll do is if it's a roof that's accessible with a ladder, we always try to get up on a roof. Sometimes roofs, depending on the steepness of the roof, the roofing material might be a challenge, because some of the material you cannot walk on. So what we'll do is we have a drone. We're able to fly a drone. I know drones get kind of a knock in the industry, but it's a safe way to look at a roof. But exactly, I mean, if there's access to get up to the roof with our ladders, we will make all attempts to get up there. And then what then we'll do is we'll come back down. If the buyer is around, we'll bring them up to speed of what we found outside. On our inspections, what we do is typically we'll have 2 inspectors on site. We do know that these do take time. When I started, it was just me, and some of these inspections could last about 4 hours. And I knew that having a second person there would allow me to do more than 1 inspection that day, because they do get daunting after a while, and it's physical, so on all aspects. So generally, if it's a property that's more than 2,000 square feet, 2,500 or more square footage of a residential home and or commercial, what we'll do is we'll have 2 inspectors there. So again, the first inspector's outside. That second inspector, if they're inside, and it same applies if they're one inspector that is doing that property, then we will go inside. We start top and then make our way down. The reason we do that is because the plumbing is upstairs where your bathrooms are, and if there's a leak, we can catch that then when we go to the second level. That if we started in the basement and then went upstairs, if we weren't disciplined enough or they didn't go back down to then check after the plumbing's been going, you can miss a leak that way. We do have tools that we utilize. We utilize thermal cameras to check for hot and cold spots, and then we have a moisture meter. And as I was saying about leaks, thermal cameras pick up the abnormalities of cold spots. Sometimes the cold spot can leave a pattern that looks like water. It may not be water, but it might be air that's getting transferred between the ceiling or the wall. The primary key thing is the moisture meter.
Okay.
There are inspectors in the industry that sometimes just will look at that and they'll say, yes, the thermal imaging picked up a leak. Unless they have a moisture meter, that is the tell-all. You need to have a moisture meter to confirm if it's a leak or not. Because it could just be some air passing through there, which would indicate a cold spot. So we do have tools that we use for our inspections. Thermal imaging is one of the bigger things that has come out over the years. We all are trained for doing residential thermography, but the main thing for detecting if there is an active leak and if there's elevated moisture is to have a good moisture meter.
Okay.
So
Nice. I love the intentional checklist. That just, you're speaking my language. I love it.
we have to have that, and that's one of the things that is instilled in all the inspectors with Real Inspection Services, and they all do a great job at sticking to that routine, because they know that if they skip that routine, then
Something
the
will
way,
get lost or
someone
forgotten.
will get lost and they'll forget to do something. One of the key things that we will always do too is one of the things I've instilled in them is when they're doing the kitchen appliances, is if they're checking the oven, crack that oven door open just as a reminder that the oven's on, right? We do operate the kitchen appliances. If we set the oven to 350 degrees, what we'll do is to make sure that the increments in temperature is going up. And again, we have equipment that can determine that. We put now all the pictures of the appliances and the mechanicals working in our report. One of the things that is changing with the Illinois standards for our industry is they want the kitchen appliances operated. At the time it wasn't. It was just a discretionary thing for the inspectors. Most inspectors did do that,
Right.
but now it's one of the
Mandatory.
things that's, yes. And so what we do is we'll let them know that the equipment is working during the inspection. It's equipment, furnaces, cooling equipment, as well as your kitchen appliances. It can work that day. 30 days from the inspection or 60, they go to closing, they move in there, it's not working. That's why we always will verify that it was working at that time.
Okay.
Right? And that's why they do the walkthroughs, to make sure that
Right.
things are functioning the way that they're intended. And we know that people are still going to be living in the house prior to that closing. So-
True. Well, that was my next question was going to be, can you tell us a little bit about like the reporting? Like you have this whole intentional checklist and process, which I love. But then how do you convey all those findings to the buyer?
Sure. So at the end of the inspection, we will have kind of a Q&A at the end with the buyer. We will go over the things that are priority repairs and or if it's a safety issue. And everything is color coded from red to orange to blue. Blue is more of a minor thing, right?
Okay.
Chipping paint, so on and so forth.
Okay. Cosmetic maybe?
Cosmetic, it's not going to be more than $500 to take care
Maintenance.
of. Maintenance
Okay.
items. If there's anything that is a priority repair or a safety, that would be red. And then most of ours are orange, which would be more recommendations that they should get this done sooner than later, basically.
And that's helpful though too, because I think when it's red and it is a safety issue, those are primarily what is negotiated in the inspection process. But also I think the next level gives you kind of a budget for what you're going to have to be setting the first 2 to 3 years in your home. Just set aside funds for maybe these items that are going to have to.
And that's a great way to look at it, because a lot of times they have the intention coming in there thinking that the house is okay, that they don't have to, they're moving into a home, so a home does need maintenance, right?
Right.
And the challenges we have is a year or two after we've done the inspection, we may get a call and we will have to go back to the report and refer back to some of the things that were identified in the report. Or the buyer will call us saying, we didn't do this, we know you called it out in the report, what do we need to do now? So
Okay.
we're always there for them, just because we were there for 3 or 4 hours on that primary property, that doesn't mean we're done. One of the things that has made our team successful is for the life that they're there at the property, we will be there for them, whether they have a question regarding some a thing that has come up, because we do know things will come up in a home.
Right.
It's just what can happen. So, and they do take
Conflicts.
advantage of that. And a lot of times we'll get a call 2 or 3 years, and it's like, it's kind of funny because they'll say, "Hey, do you remember me? We had the property that had the boiler that was leaking," and sometimes it's that comment that will trigger, for me at least, I have a weird memory that way, that can bring up the address and just say, "Yes, I do remember that." So, but yeah, they do take advantage of that, and we try to address any concerns that they may have, even 60, 90 days, 120 to a year or two after the inspection.
And that's kind of a great segue into what I was going to talk about next, was handling, like, let's say you're at a property and you do find something of substance. I'm kind of a person who I like to know the unknowns. And I think that buyers, sellers, sometimes brokers alike, tiptoe around maybe inspection items. I am definitely a loving to know ahead of time what I don't know. I like to know the unknowns, put it that way. So when you do get to a property, let's talk about two things. How are those findings communicated? But I think you might have already covered that in saying that you do, at the end of the property inspection, you do cover those things with the buyer right there, right? It is noted in the report, so I guess I'm answering my own question. But then let's talk about like a pre-inspection for listing brokers who are putting properties on the market. What do you suggest to sellers, or what? I mean, yes, you're in the inspection business, so obviously you're going to think that they're a good idea, but why are they a good idea?
Well,
according to you.
Sure. So, as I had stated earlier, with partnering up with my friend, he's a childhood friend, Tom, is the industry's changing, so things are becoming a lot quicker in terms of how things are flowing in the residential arena of inspections. And one of the things that, to do a pre-listing inspection, the homeowner knows exactly what they have with their home. So they could even say, based upon the inspection items that have been unearthed during the inspection, they could say, the reason we're pricing our home at this price point is we know that there are things wrong with it. So don't come back to us saying that the boiler's old or the electrical's outdated. We know this. That's why we're at this price point. Some of the things sometimes the homeowner won't know is if there's any safety issues. And there have been a couple of times where one in particular, we removed the dead front from the electrical cover panel, and there was a breaker. It was an older panel. I'm not going to mention the name because it's not fair to that.
Okay.
But the breaker in itself was melting from behind where it was connected at the bus. And they didn't know about it until we started talking to the homeowner. She then said, it's funny because when we were in the family room, we had the TV on, it kept blinking on and off. And ironically enough, that breaker was for that part of the house.
Oh, no.
And what would happen is the breaker had failed to trip. So it was literally melting from behind. So they were able to get someone out there that day, and they were able to take care of it. And all fairness to them, they handled it right when we went to them. And I think right when we were leaving, an electrician pulled up. And not only did they fix it, they replaced the whole electrical panel box.
Right,
so.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so
there
again.
Are a few known out there.
There is, and that's what the unknowns are, because not every homeowner is going to take the dead front off their electrical cover panel. It's called the dead front for a reason.
Right.
It's to protect any arcing of wiring. That's why that cover's there, to keep it inside the box instead of coming out.
Always approach it with the back of a hand?
Yes. So back of our right hand, we feel if it's warm, and if there's any humming noises or unusual signs coming from there. And then we have other equipment to see if it is energized. So we will, that's probably one of the scariest parts of our job. One of the scariest jobs is dealing with the electrical. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of arc flashes and they're not fun. So with that, then they're aware of what they have. Sometimes it's more of knowledge base that, hey, you know, I've kept a pretty decent home. So, but I think one of the things that sometimes is a drag for that homeowner is if there are multiple conditions that come up and then it becomes a disclosure for that buyer.
Right, but then
coming
it's
in.
an as-is sale, or you can decide
Correct.
of these 8 items, you can do 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Correct.
And, you know,
Correct.
for me, I think then the home warranty product that my brokerage has is a phenomenal. We'll talk with that company as well, but I think that can kind of cover the gap that there may be. But I think, again, just to know the unknowns to me is really, well, this has been awesome. I just wanted to know if somebody wanted to get in touch with you,
So yeah, so
where would they find you?
So we're Real Inspection Services. It's realinspectionservices.com. It's 312-724-5100. Jane Doyle, she'll answer the phone. She's wonderful. She smiles through the phone. She'll be able to answer any of your questions. And then if she needs to get a hold of me, she will. But yeah, I appreciate you
Awesome.
having me out today.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
it too. Yeah.
Thanks.
Uh-huh.